welcome to another episode of Standing 8. I'm Paul Fitzgerald and I'm joined by my co-host, three-time world champion and Boxing Hall of Famer, Jeff Fennick.
Great to be here, Paul.
And today we've got North Melbourne, former AFL legend, Corey Mckernan. Welcome.
Former AFL legend.
Former AFL
I've
player.
been demoted already.
Yeah. Still a legend.
Yeah.
How are you, mate?
Very good. Well, between us all, we've won a couple of premierships and world titles between us all at the table, haven't we? So
I'm not sure. Maybe you guys have,
You're part of it, Paul. You're part of the table, brother.
Welcome. So, Corey, is it true that you never actually wanted to play AFL football? Is that...
Well, what I did, I think like a lot of kids that you start playing football from a young age, and I started playing when I was 5. I think at that time when I started playing football, I couldn't even sign my name. Some people would say nothing's changed anyway. But at that time, couldn't even sign my name, played footy. So I was 5 years old, played until I was about 12 or 13. And the thing that I then got into, I started playing golf when I was about 12 or 13 and played from then till probably when I was 13 till I was about 17. And then Dennis Pagan started coming around my house, who was our then senior coach. And I used to, we lived in a court in Gladstone Park in Melbourne, which is near Tullamarine. And I used to see his silver Chimera coming down the court. And I'd tell Mum, I'd say, Mum, tell him I'm not home. So he'd come to the front door and I'd go hide in my bedroom. And in the end, he just said, I think he got a hold of me at a weak moment. And he said, oh, look, just come down and play. We're not worried about whether you're going to train. And I think on a Thursday night, I went down there, trained once, and then on the Saturday, I think it would have been round 6 or 7 of that year, and then kicked 11 goals in my first game. So that was the end of golf after that.
Yeah, right. We still play a lot of golf. Is that what you would have liked to have done if you hadn't have played AFL?
It's interesting. I don't know, obviously with Jeff, with boxing and stuff like that, and I know that you loved your league, but I played football because I was good at it, but then golf I actually really loved. So, but it was just, did I make the right choice? Yeah, I 100% made the right choice. But I think it's like every athlete either wants to be a movie star and every movie star wants to be an athlete, you know what I mean? And you can probably see all the photos up on Jeff's wall that's exactly, it's funny how people do one profession and they want to do another one.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely so. Well, like I said, I was just blessed. And I mean, I didn't want to box and I just found it by accident. And, the rest was history for me. But, Corey, how's the game changed today?
The game of the it has changed a lot. I just feel like now I know we're in New South Wales and it's very league country, but one thing with the AFL that I don't know whether people actually know about is if apparently we've got the greatest game in the world, why do they need to change the rules every year? And I think they have a rules committee, and sometimes you know what committees are like. Committees nearly feel like they have to make decisions every year. And I personally just wish they'd leave the bloody game alone and just let it evolve. Even in a year like now with COVID, there were so many, the players were taken out of their own environments. They were playing out of hubs, and it was such and you know better than anyone from being in boxing and having the importance of routine and structure and that sort of thing to be at your best. Well, imagine all those players that all of a sudden were taken out of Melbourne, out of their daily routines, but then still expected to perform at a high standard. And again, to answer the question about how's the game, I just wish they'd leave it alone, and especially on the back of a year like COVID, just let the dust settle. And I think at the end of the day, the AFL probably did a really good job in terms of making the season happen. I think with all the obstacles that got thrown at it, I think Gillon McLachlan, I mean, he really earned his money.
Yeah, also, as well as I think what you're talking about, to change your lifestyle so dramatically, being a player that you can't see your girlfriend, or you can't see your family or your children at times, wow, it must have been hard.
And I think it is little things like that. People would go, okay, they're coming from Melbourne, they're getting out of Melbourne, which, okay, that was great. You don't want to be in lockdown. But as Jeff mentioned, those little things like during the week, like you might have, okay, on a Wednesday night, I go around to mum and dad's for dinner, or I go and play golf, or I just want to go down and have a cup of coffee. All these things, they don't sound like big things, but for a lot of players, they are. Like,
because your routine's sort of ruined.
100%. And it doesn't matter whether you're in sport or business. And that's probably the biggest thing that happened with COVID, is that disruption in everyone's daily routines and the impact it's had.
It's not just the routine, it's your lifestyle. I mean, you sleep with somebody regularly every night, and then all of a sudden there's months it must have killed these guys. I'm blessed. I mean, here at home, I mean, and like I said, I've got the gym, I've got everything. I mean, I feel so sorry for some of those guys who, crossed the line and got in trouble. Wow, man, I wouldn't have been in that hotel for a day. I would have been sneaking out every single day.
I did feel very sorry for. It's all right for the guys that might have had partners and had their girlfriends, but I tell you what, for the single blokes in there, they might have been doing a little bit tough. That the Wednesday regular that couldn't come over. Again, it's another part of your routine. They're just little things like that. And look, I think at the end of the day, the people that put on the game this year, I know in the AFL and the NRL did do a brilliant job, but the AFL in particular, when you virtually had, at one point, you had all 18 teams in Queensland, which you would never imagine in your wildest dreams. But I think the job that they did to put the game on, they were having 4-day breaks in the end.
I'm sure some of those players have learned to be really sneaky now because you got your mates around you all the time. I'm not sure where they would have or how they would have done it, Corey, but I would have found some way to do it. Let me guarantee you that.
I bet you would have.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. You know what athletes are like. We do get very resourceful and we can always find a way.
Very creative. So, I mean, what one thing that amazes me with AFL is, every game you're getting 80 to 100,000 people, to a match. You've got a huge supporter base in Melbourne. It's like a religion. What's it like for a young fella coming into the AFL? All of a sudden, you're a megastar. What's that transition like, and how do you sort of handle that?
Look, like you said, I think sport in Sydney and Melbourne are two vastly different things. I think up here, there are a lot of other things you can do. But even as we noticed yesterday when we went to a number of different meetings, to get from one part of Sydney to another part of Sydney is probably not the easiest thing to do. And as you mentioned, look, I don't know what it is about the AFL. It is in the culture of the game where people love to go to the footy. And it is one great thing with Melbourne that you're probably looking forward to next year, like round one, Richmond versus Carlton, MCG, 90,000 people. Like there is nothing better. And I think it's the thing in every sport, and boxing would have been the same. Obviously on the weekend we have Tyson and Roy Jones fighting without a crowd. I mean, I think it really rams home how special having fans there are. I know it's very cliched, but it doesn't matter what sport it's been, and the AFL, I think, even noticed that. It's interesting even with a team like Geelong. If Geelong go back next year, and as they probably should, they've recruited Jeremy Cameron from GWS. If they go to the grand final next year, it is a vastly different experience for. They've really only got Joel Selwood, their captain, and Tom Hawkins. Outside of that, every other player in that team, yes, they've played a grand final in Brisbane, but playing in front of 30, 40,000 is nothing compared to playing at the MCG where you run out, and it's probably no different to walking out in a fight in Vegas where as soon as you walk out, you sort of get that punch in the face of the crowd and you feel the crowd when you do it. So nothing can ever, sort of to answer your question, I don't think anything ever really prepares you for the wall of sound and your first experience of running out in the MCG. And I think for me, I played really well in my 6th or 7th game. We played Collingwood in front of 76,000 people, and I played really well. So it was sort of like no different to probably having a big fight where you perform really well. You know that's in your memory bank that, hey, forever and a day, whenever I go back and go on you can do it. And all of my bigger problem was more the consistency. All the big games I was fine, but it was all the other ones where I wasn't so good.
Yeah, definitely. Just
going back a little, Corey, I obviously being from Sydney, I used to always think that AFL was inferior to the NRL. And then I had all my fights in Melbourne and I trained with a lot of the guys, the Darren Mullanes and the Tony Shaws and all those guys. And then I watched them at training. I went to a lot of training days for all different clubs, Collingwood and so on. And the one thing that really stood out for me was in the NRL back 10 years ago, or a forward would do a specific forward training and other guys would do different things. But in the AFL, everybody done the same. So they all had that amazing skill. They were all taught that skill level. In the NRL, like if you're a big forward, hold the ball, just take the ball up the middle. And it really impressed me. I've ever since I moved and lived in Melbourne and forward in Melbourne, I love watching the game. And at the moment, I'm training a few of the GWS guys, Toby Green and the boys, come to the house a couple of times a week. And I'm really enjoying it. They're working really, really hard.
And I think, look, in regards to both the games, everyone loves to have this debate, who's better. It doesn't matter. They're both great games.
Yeah.
And I don't think, people in Sydney understand how much the Melbourne Storm are revered in Melbourne. Like just they now, like the likes of Cameron Smith, Billy Slater and these guys in Melbourne, they are as big a names in Melbourne as your Chris Judds, Wayne Careys. Like to have that sort of thing, I don't think the NRL embraces how great that really is. I think they sort of take it for granted and they're sort of like, we don't like Melbourne Storm, they're successful. I reckon people up here sort of nearly resent the Storm because they're successful rather than seeing it as, hey, you've gone into AFL heartland, look at what you've done for the game. And I don't think they really understand it. I know they're talking about they'll do a statue for Cameron Smith and Billy Slater, and like they should, because the impact on Melbourne is unbelievable.
Well, I think it's a lot of it in the Australian culture. It's that tall poppy syndrome. And you felt the effects of that a little bit too, Jeff. Anyone that's super successful, we try and cut them down. I think that's probably happened with the Melbourne Storm.
But I think, you know what, it's the one thing many years ago that the AFL did right and the NFL are probably, the NRL are probably 30 years behind is that the AFL embraced the national competition. And they just said, right, we're going to put teams in Perth, we're going to have them in Adelaide. The NRL for a little bit did them, but they should have stuck at them.
Well, again, we tried, and the most successful one was Melbourne. And just think about it. How would anybody think that an NRL club was going to make it in the AFL capital of the world? It's crazy what the transformation. It's crazy what those guys have done. But winning and having a great formula is a great formula.
It's crazy when you actually think about it. So when we all get to travel and you explain that, like I suppose in my case, that you actually played Australian rules football. And when you explain to people in Los Angeles or New York to go, yeah, we've got this game and there's actually 10 teams in one state, and yet they've all an average crowd of about 40,000 people.
Crazy.
There's one team that's got in particular now 100,000 members in Richmond. Like it's crazy when you think about it and trying to explain it. That for a long time, up until the last few years, a place like Los Angeles didn't have an NFL team. Yeah. Now they've actually got two, but it's such a big market. You're talking 60, 70 million people didn't have a football team, but yet a population of 5 million had 10.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned a name before, Wayne Carey.
Yeah.
What was he like? He was the captain of your side for the majority of your career. What was he like as a leader? And what's he like as a guy?
The biggest thing I think that was grossly underestimated about the way that Wayne went about it, and he actually did our walk, which Jeff did the other day. And I say this time and time about with Wayne, and even the biggest impact that even had on me was the way that he trained and the way that he went about it. Like I know that, yes, there was the on-field stuff and how great a player he was and running back with the flight of the ball and being courageous and that sort of thing. But the biggest thing that was underestimated about Wayne Carey was the way that he prepared for games of footy. No different to why you won triple world champion, that you made those sacrifices in the way that you went about it.
Hey, Corey, it's great that you say that because I talk about everything. Preparation's everything. Forget about game day. It's what you do prior to game day that makes you perform on game day. If you haven't done it, you don't have the mental capacity to cope or to change at times if something's not happening right. But if you've done it in training, you've gone through that pain barrier, it's really simple and great. All great athletes do that. They have that recipe.
And that's where I've been sort of really fortunate with, and I know we're going to talk about it soon anyway with the walks, that it's, something that, yes, I'm helping other people out, but I tell you what, even when I'm getting to ask questions, and obviously I got to interview Jeff, and then this morning we had Pat Rafter, and just going back to Wayne Carey, I think the biggest thing that the impact that he had on me was at training, like even just little things like where we'd run a 400 metre and just to be on that inside lane. And I'd go, come on, give me a go. And it'd just be little things. No, well, if you want the inside lane, you beat me. You know what I mean? So just little things like that. And even all the extra sessions during the week. And this is what I'd say to people. If you want to be normal, just do the training that everyone else does. Or if you want to be extra special, well, do the extras. And that's the thing that he always used to say to me, like, you'd follow him, like whether it was, okay, this week we're going for an extra swim or might be an extra skills session and all of a sudden you can go into games from a mindset point of view that you can nearly not relax, but you know that you've actually done everything possible on game day where you can actually enjoy it, which you do want to do that when you're playing sport.
Also had the great thrill of introducing Wayne to Tyson.
Yeah,
we're in Vegas together. We had great time.
He spoke about that. He said he was about several, because he actually said, we were talking about this the other day.
That would have been a good trip.
No, because he actually said, he was walking through the casino, I think at Caesar's Palace, was it?
It was
one of the casinos, and he said, I'm walking through Caesar's Palace, and then all of a sudden I hear this duck, like this. And he goes, well, there's only one duck. I'm in the casino in Vegas. I think it must have been you that was yelling out to him.
Duck. I was going to punch him in the head. I was trying to duck it. I knocked him out. No.
But it is, you know what? It's actually funny. And again, you talk about every sportsman wanting to be in a different sport and whatever. For someone like Wayne Carey, even for him, it would have been interesting that, I mean, you have fans that come up to him and get real nervous and tongue-tied and things like that. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
No, he loved it. He was, when I took him to the mic and we sat down and had a few drinks and stuff, Wayne was wrapped. Yeah, it was great. I feel good too because, when you I was with Mike and to introduce him, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
How great was he?
Yeah, well, look, I think the debate rages either him or Lee Matthews are the best two players that have ever played the game. Look, for mine, I never saw Lee Matthews play, but I probably nearly sometimes took it for granted that the things that he did was just normal. It was just normal because you played with him every single week. But I think my thing where I define whether players are great or not is their ability to have that extra gear, like what we've seen with Dustin Martin, like where they get to a certain point in the game and they've had enough and they just go, nah, it's time that they've got another gear, and they just grab the game by the throat. And Wayne Carey used to do that. The other players that used to be good, like Anthony Koutafidis, when Kouta, and people ask me, and that's probably stealing maybe one of your questions, the best player I played against and the football that Anthony Koutafidis played in 2000 was the best footy from an opposition player that I'd ever seen, for that sheer fact alone of his ability to just grab a game and just grab it by the throat. And that's what I think how I judge how good a player is. And obviously Wayne had that in spades. You just felt like there were different times of the game that when a goal needed to be kicked or something needed to be done, that he just went and did it. And that's where we're pretty fortunate with seeing what Dustin Martin's been able to do in these big games, and in particular the grand finals. It's sort of getting into that category of your Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, that type of thing where, they've got their normal performance, but it's at those, it's Fitzy in his prime. But I think when they've got that extra gear, that's what really probably defined like Wayne Carey and all the greats do that in spades.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think made you successful during your AFL career?
I think what made me successful when I played my best was really when I was having fun. Like when I look back at it, and even it probably leads into a little bit about the stuff that I'm doing now, that when I had a why, like a bigger than myself. And like even in that time at North Melbourne, I wanted to win a premiership medal for the guys that had been at North Melbourne for a long time. So that year when I won the AFL MVP wasn't a great year because I won the MVP, which is obviously great. And that was the year that I tied for the Brownlow and didn't win it. But the reason why that year was so, I can look back at it now, and why was that year so special and why was it the most rewarding year of footy? Well, it was because I wanted to win a medal for all these other guys I was playing footy with. So when I was in that frame,
that had a greater purpose.
100%. When I was in that frame of mind, that it was a lot bigger than just the individual stuff. And I know that you'd even spoken about it from a family point of view, that when you've got a bigger why than just doing it for your own selfish needs, that's when I felt like if I could combine that, you got a purpose and then you're having fun, well, then that's when I did play my best footy.
You know what, Corey, then I want to ask you this question because you've brought up maybe 3 or 4 times already that when you were playing your best or when you – and why couldn't you bring that to every game?
I think now that I've had the –
why didn't you want to bring that to every game?
No, I would bring it to every game, but I think now that in hindsight, I think, I needed to be able to find that bigger purpose of – I think that year was so good in terms of wanting to – win a medal for a bigger purpose. I probably did. The reason why I think I had the fluctuations is having a goal that was every bit the same as that one. And whereas I was probably searching to try and find it, and that's why I probably went through those highs and lows of, in big games I was great, but then the other ones I struggled. But if I was able to pinpoint it, that's with the benefit of time. It's over 20 years ago now. But that would probably be the number one thing of, okay, how could I, at the end of that season, I wanted to do it because of that. But I think the big one now for me would have been as well anyway is, and I don't know whether you did this from a boxing point of view, is find someone else's record and then chase it. I mean, I know that, like, for example, in the AFL, that maybe Wayne Carey was chasing Dermot Brereton's record. And, I mean, you've got all these players that you aspire to. Maybe that was probably the thing that I should have done, is either pick someone and said, right, I'm going to chase that. I'm not, whether I get there or not, but at least it gives me something to chase that's just bigger than what I'm actually doing. You know what I mean?
Goal setting, but yeah, that's great. No, I said, for me, it was never trying to do what somebody else done or break anybody else's record. I just wanted to be the best that I could every fight. And I mean, I think the rewards come naturally if that happens. I mean, if you're as great as you were and you just play consistently well every week, I think you automatically break records and do things that you never dreamt of doing. And that's how I enjoyed it more, not really trying to say I wanted to do something, but I continually just worked hard and, I achieved goals that I never thought I could or never believed I could, that's for sure.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing I'm probably proud of is when we had our biggest games and when everything was on the line, that's when I know I actually played at my best. So all the finals games, I think we played in 24 finals, like all my finals record. I know my finals record's as good as anyone's, when it came to those big games. And in particular, we played in 3 grand finals, like 2 of the grand finals where I was in the best 2 or 3 players. So I distinctly remember the 96 grand final. I remember walking in at quarter time and it's weird how you can remember conversations you're having with yourself, and even just me having a conversation with myself as I walked into the huddle. And it was weird. It was in some ways I put more pressure on myself, but I was having this conversation where I went, you know what, if you don't play well today, this is remembered forever. You know what I mean? So you've got to, this is it. You know what I mean? So, but the bigger the crowd, the better I was. Like I love, like especially at the MCG when that, how big the occasion was. But I also love the thought of if you perform on those biggest stages, that's what everyone's going to remember.
Yeah, definitely. In 96, we're talking about at the moment, you had a lot of success, but you missed out on the Brownlow medal. You voted the highest. You should have won it, but you were ineligible because of that suspension. What was that disappointment like, and how did you bounce back from that?
But the whole week of the 96 grand final is still the best week of my whole life. And people probably think, hang on, well, I lost the Brownlow medal. But so my week started basically in the prelim final. We played the Brisbane Lions and I hurt my posterior cruciate in my knee, and I got carried off just before quarter time. So I'm already going into grand final week that, I'm going in with a knee injury. So Monday was the Brownlow. Tuesday night we had training. And then people say, I haven't got a Brownlow medal. Well, I actually have, because Wayne Carey and Anthony Rock stopped at McDonald's, and McDonald's had a promotion that year. And Anthony Rock and Wayne Carey stopped and got me a Brownlow medal from McDonald's. And then they actually presented it to me at training. So I've still got it. It sits with my premiership medallions, because that means as much to me getting it off my mates as what it meant getting it off the umpires. So that was the Tuesday. The Wednesday of grand final week, I remember going to Vimy House, and then I had, I think, about 50 mils of blood drained out of my knee.
Wow.
And even at that point, the North Melbourne doctor, Harry Unlick, who's, it was a brilliant doctor, even Harry said, I don't think it's a real good idea that you play. And my response was, well, fuck off, Harry, I'm playing. Mm-hmm. And so then that was on the Wednesday. Thursday train, then we have the parade and everything like that. So going into the grand final, I've had this week, and I'm only 22 years old, and had everything from my knee, Brownlow medal, all these things, and then to still come out in the grand final, and I had 31 possessions in the grand final. Well, don't worry about the Brownlow. I think I was pretty stiff not to win the Norm Smith medal for best on the grand final.
Yeah, definitely.
But so when everyone asked me about the Brownlow. I go, nah, the way I treated that week as a 22-year-old, I could have got to game day and gone, you know what, it's been a big week. It's all been a bit too hard, my knee sore and whatever, but I'm more proud as a 22-year-old that I look back, I had the entire planet thrown at me and then still come out the other side with a premiership medallion.
Yeah.
Listen, I need to ask you a quick question because I thought broken hands and that. Can you just show me that finger, mate? Where's that going?
That was
obviously I know what happened to it, but
so for those people that aren't watching, Corey's got
what do you use that for these days? What happens when you're wiping your backside with that?
So look, what actually happened? That one was more the fact, and I don't know whether you're able to do that in boxing, but it was more the fact that it was continually hitting it on the end, and then I can actually look when I first finished playing. What was that? 2000 and. You know what's funny? I'll tell you what the funniest thing is, and you go to America a lot, is when I had some friends, Jordan and Virginia Muir, very great friends of mine. We get off at LAX like you do and go down the stairs, see the photo of the president up on the wall, and we go through customs. So then obviously when you get to customs, what do you have to do? You've actually got to put your hand on that little green thing.
Very difficult for you, mate.
Both hands. So how do you reckon I go when I've actually got to put my hand down on there?
You'll need two.
And every time the person from TSA comes up, well, can you straighten it up? And I'm like, oh, well, no, if I could straighten it up, it'd be dead straight, wouldn't it? And you know the TSA guys. So you get flicked from there, which is all, and you get the ladies and whatever. Then you got to go to the super serious guy that's on the counter, which is a great experience, isn't it? And then they're trying to work out how to get my finger down. So every single time, whoever I'm with, they always get a good laugh about my finger and not. Look, I could actually get it fixed. There was many years ago, I think when I first retired, they said, oh, look, you can get it fixed, but it might be stuck straight. Now, the biggest thing I was worried about was obviously golf. And my finger being stuck straight off the club. And look, I definitely do need to get it fixed, but I don't probably notice it. There's been a couple of times when I've been on TV and I'm talking and then I'll actually see my finger and then realise how weird it looks. So for me, it's normal, but then I understand you guys look at it and go, yeah, you're not normal.
You're not normal.
Well, Corey, you achieved absolutely everything in AFL, premierships, as you said, Brownlow medal, even though it was from McDonald's at that particular time, MVPs, played with some of the greats. How did you transition from all that success then post-playing career? You became an entrepreneur, but how did you handle that transition?
I think, look, the first part of it was I watched Craig Kelly, who Jeff's probably had a bit to do when he was at Collingwood. Not that Ned would have been the hardest trainer. I can't imagine Ned being in the ring like Pants and Tony Shaw and these sorts of guys, but I looked at that point, I had Steve Wallace who played at the Western Bulldogs and I saw the way that he finished out of footy and then he set up Essendon Mazda. And so I had a couple of people that I watched that had come out of the game in terms of their transition and in particular Craig Kelly.
Because it's not easy. You look at the majority of players, fighters, in every sport, once it's done, they can't find anything.
We were talking before about the athletes that end up broke and have got nothing.
But you know what, without sounding too deep, I reckon the best analogy that I'd ever heard about post-career transition, and stick with me because it sounds like it's far-fetched, I'd heard this analogy that when NASA took astronauts to the moon, that when they got them back from the moon, they tried to give them a mission that was every bit as good as going to the moon. Now, when you think about it, whether you're a fighter, whether you're any sportsman, that when you start off, you want to get your first fight, you want to get your first title. Like you've always got these up and up and ups. And if you don't have a challenge like post-career that's every bit as challenging, you can see why so many then fall off a cliff. I just thought it was a great analogy that when you're playing sport, you've got all these things that you're always ticking off the list.
Well, let me tell you, I don't want to go to the moon on my list, that's for sure.
No, but it's
not on my bucket list, that's for sure.
But it's more the fact that, if you've got challenges and you've got these little things that can keep you going. And I think the other one too is if you can maintain that structure, the routine, I think that's as big a one, that's as vital as any. And as we said from the pandemic, when you mess with people's structure and routine, look at how much it then freaks people out. And I think athletes are very much creatures of habit. They know they're going to training at this time and it's very, I don't know I know boxing in terms of your training in the morning, but the AFL clubs, they're there the entire day. Everything's done for them, everything. They don't have to think. And yet when you rip all that out from underneath them, you can see why so many people struggle when they finish playing.
So what mission did you give yourself once you finished playing AFL that sort of kept that drive and fire burning?
I think in the end it was finding something that you were it was cliche, but you were very passionate about. Like that would be my biggest advice for anyone coming outside, that go and do something that even if you didn't get paid money for doing, would you get up in the morning and get your ass moving and go and do it? And I think if it's something that's aligned like that.
I think it's a great analogy because you would have played AFL for nothing. I would have boxed. I mean, just to have the success and the love and that friendship, that mateship and watching your friends, I would have boxed for nothing. Of course, we made money. It's great, but I'd do it for nothing. So it's a great analogy. And I think, people need to. And I think we need more people like Corey that can travel and talk to football clubs and people about that, because there's a huge gap in people's lives when their career's over. And like I've got a lot to do with the Brain Institute at the moment. Corey and I talk about, obviously Jeff Fennick and Steve Roach and all these famous guys who are talking. But if something does happen to me, I can afford to pay for somebody to come and look after me and help me and stuff. I feel for the guys who never made it to the heights that you or I made it to, and what are they doing with their lives? And we don't even know, and we don't care about them. We need to care about everybody, not just the famous guys, not just the guys who we all know. We need to get to the grassroots and go through the history and check up on everybody.
You're right. And I think it's also with a lot of people that, don't define your success that you've either just become a world champion or a premiership player, an MVP, that you have been successful because of the sacrifices that you've actually made anyway. That's success.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what it takes to work your ass off and make this commitment and do all these things. That is automatically being successful.
Well, that's one of my sayings. I tell all my fighters, because I know what I put them through to get them to that period. I tell them all prior to fight, listen, of course we've trained you in, but you've already done everything you could do. You've already been successful for me. So whatever happens tonight, it really doesn't matter to me, because I know what we get put through to fight for a title and for any fight. So I'm happy you said that.
Which is also good, because having that mentality anyway, that's also, it makes people relax to go, you know what, I have done everything.
You know, Corey, I talk about this because there used to be all these signs you read, and there was a sign that I used to always, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. I just think it's the worst sign I've ever read when I think about that, because listen, what happens if you don't win? I mean, as long as you've done your best and you've given your best, as far as I'm concerned, you're a winner. You've prepared. There's always going to be somebody better than you. So if you've prepared the best you can, you're a winner. And I try to explain to people, listen, some people come second or third or fourth or last. It's about getting back there and summarising why you came second, third, fourth or last. And if you want to win, go out and do the hard work and keep trying. So winning's not everything. Competing and preparing at the best level you can and giving yourself every opportunity is a winner to me.
I think that's why even with me, like being retired, it always, when I got to the end, if anything, I'd done too much. Like, but from a preparation point of view, when it come to doing extra swims or extra boxing sessions, or I knew by the end I'd fired all my shots. And I think if anyone, they can honestly say that they gave themselves the absolute best opportunity, but then you got no regrets.
Yeah.
There's that, if you've done, you can't do anything extra.
And you know what, Corey, but now there's I'm a strong believer in that sometimes some of these trainers and these, they're burning the engines out too early. It's better to be a little underdone than overdone. Some of these guys who do want to push themselves harder than anybody else, and we're going to do this again for Corey, or we're going to do this again. These guys are given 200% every time. By the end of the year, they're burnt out. So you got to watch them. You've got to be really careful. You've got to be, as a trainer and as a teacher, you just got to watch out and make sure these guys aren't overdoing it, because a lot of people do. They push themselves harder than anybody else, and you can't do that to your body. Like I said, it's like an engine. If it's burnt out, it's burnt out. You can't fix it. If it's underdone, you can push it a little bit more.
That's where, and you actually watch a team like Richmond from the outside. I'm not saying it just because Richmond have won 3 out of the last 4 premierships, but the environment that this seems like they've created at Richmond would just be a brilliant environment to play football in, that they don't get too high, they don't get too low. but they always seem in those pre-games and things like that, they're all having a laugh.
They've got a good culture.
That's what people forget. Like that you actually, we want to be serious, and I know that there's a lot at stake. But I tell you what, if it's not fun, you don't want to do it.
Do you want to tell us about some of the initiatives that you've got going on at the moment, Corey?
Yeah, well, the biggest one that at the moment that I really, unfortunately, I saw a headline in the Australian newspaper that's what really got me moving. I created this thing called Walk With Me, and where that started was I saw a headline in the Australian newspaper that the suicide toll was going to outstrip the coronavirus death toll. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that that's actually come to fruition, which is very sad. But what I did at that time, and I think it was back in March, I thought, well, I'm actually really good mates with Wayne Swass, who I played football with at North Melbourne, and also another guy who played football, that Jake Edwards, who's got a foundation called Outside the Locker Room. And I've had a little bit of dealings with them and thought, well, what can I actually do? You know, I mean, I know we're great at conversations nowadays, but my thing was, well, what can I do? I've only ever known physical activity, probably like yourself, Jeff, where you just go, hang on, well, I'll get moving. So then that's where I thought, well, hang on, if I just come up with a walk, and then that's where the whole thing started. I thought, well, hang on, how can I connect with these people? Zoom, we all became really bloody good at Zoom, didn't we? Yeah. Actually, even you blokes became good at Zoom. But even, and then I thought, well, hang on, if I can get people on a Zoom walk. And I tell you what, like some of the messages that I got during the pandemic about, and again, it came down to structure, routine, just getting up, going for a walk in the morning. Like you think, okay, I know we're in Sydney now and I'm on the Sunshine Coast, but Melbourne middle of winter, going through that pandemic, a lot of these guys, and I told them, and you'd sort of know some of these sayings a little bit, Jeff, anyway, that I said, you know what, you get through this June, July, this is like money in the bank. I go, this is like training sessions in the bank that when you look back in November and December, I go, they're going to be the ones to go, you know what, I got my ass out of bed and I made the effort to get up. And the big thing that what we try and do, and we're fortunate to have Jeff as a guest, is my big thing is you want to give people tools in their kit bag that in any environment they can thrive. And that was the big mantra, that what little gem can they pick up from Jeff Fennick, or we had Wayne Carey the other day, or Pat Rafter this morning. Like if all of a sudden there's just little things that people can pick up. The other thing that happens from it, and I don't know whether you boys notice this, if you do a Zoom where you're actually just sitting at home, like if we're sitting and doing a Zoom here, well then I drift off and I grab my phone. But the good thing about when you walk, they have to, people are really engaged.
Attention,
First of all, the time goes quickly, and two, you sort of committed to it.
Like I said, even with Jeff, the time flew, and then even this morning, like you have Pat, right? It's something at the moment that, I mean, I don't know where the direction of Walk With Me is going to go. This year, do I make a cent out of doing that? No, but I get a front row ticket that I get to do research, and I get to interview Jeff Fennick.
Well, you've certainly done that well. I was going to let you know I love doing anything for anybody and helping, but especially when somebody's done their homework and they know, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the walk. Every question you asked me, you dotted your I's and crossed your T's, and it made it really enjoyable for me.
Yeah, look, I think with anyone you're ever talking to, I'm conscious that you want to make it flow. And like even you're also trying to go, okay, how am I going to make this flow? How am I going to extract some gems out of him? I don't want to ask him the same lame ass questions. Like how am I going to, so even like this morning I got up at I knew I was interviewing Pat Rafter, and it's funny, once you actually start doing it, it is pretty easy to do when you start. Like I was watching footage on Jeff and going, it was like you were reliving your childhood of going all these boxing matches and things like that. So like I said, something that, do I make any money out of? No. But in terms of the people that you've helped, like during the pandemic, I'll tell you what, like Monday mornings after Dan Andrews would make an announcement, fuck me, like I felt like I was an AFL coach that pretended at halftime the team was down by 20 goals and I was having to, I'd spend the first 20 minutes, they were just stunned. But at least they got out of bed, and then after the first one.
It's something to look forward to.
Well, But I had to really even put more preparation into it myself, going, well, hang on, if I'm really going to drive this and I'm really going to make sure I lift them,
Yeah, you got to know what you're talking about.
I've actually got to think of, well, hang on, what's an angle I can take? Like all I had to keep going is go, you know what, you got no other choice. The things that I really push to people is like, write a list of everything that you're going to do when this is over. This is going to end. So write an amazing list of all the things you're going to do. Like if you're going to go to America or you're going to do all this, or I'm going to do this with family. But you know, the interesting part I've noticed since the pandemic's over, we've been getting guests, like obviously like Jeff. I've noticed it's nearly harder to get people now than what it was during the pandemic. And the only thing I'm starting to sense a little bit is that are people getting a little bit comfortable again? They'll just go back into old habits. And I don't know, but at least I'd like to think with what we've created with Walk With Me, we've had, I reckon, a huge impact in helping people get through a tough year. So
yeah, no, I think it's a great initiative. And as you said, you've had Jeff on there as a guest through one of the Zooms. So yeah, well done.
Yes, well, especially thanks to you because you got the Zoom up and running.
It was a team effort. So would you say that's your greater purpose these days, just trying to help people? That's what you get, the greatest thrill.
Oh, look, I think with the projects I want to do, that if that would be the optimum sweet spot. If I can continue to do things like that, I probably next year I do want to maybe start doing some like some coaching, sort of one-on-one that may be around sort of physical and mental performance. Because I think there's a gap there. Like, and getting a result with people, it's probably no different to some of the stuff that Jeff's doing with fighters. When you can see some of the things that you're saying and they're working, you get as big a buzz out of it as anyone else does.
Mate, I love coaching much more than I did fighting. I love teaching. I love seeing my boys have success and sharing it with them.
But so if you go into a fight, how much, like nothing could ever replace the nerves of actually being a fighter. But do you find you nearly get more nervous?
I'm more nervous, yeah, because I had my own, fate in my hands when I was fighting.
Because you've got control of your own destiny.
Of course, I would just get control of this. Trying to think, have I, done the right thing here? Is this the right guy from the fight? Have I given the right plan? And my boys listen to everything I say. So if you watch a fight and if I say something within a second, they're doing it. So they trust my eye and my and my judgment.
So when a fight's on, I've always been curious to know, like, so in the middle of like fight, is it that hard to stop like momentum during a fight? So even though, yes, I know the bell goes and you'll come in between the rounds, how hard is it to, in the middle of a fight, to then switch tack and then come up with something new that's going to turn the momentum back your way?
Well, it all depends, again, who's your coach or teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone back to the corner and drank some water and really never told anything because I was winning my fights all the time. Just do what you're doing. When you're in that position where, your guy's in a tough fight, it's your job to give him those instructions. It's like a footy coach saying, listen, we need to stay away from him or kick the ball to him, and that's my job as well.
Yeah.
I'm just totally focused on what the other guy's doing and what we need to do or what we can do to better it. So my first thing is I just let my fighter sit down. First thing is all about relaxing, getting the heart rate down, and we have a minute, so I don't try to do too many things except let them sit down, breathe, and let them relax, and then just tell them one or two things, and that's all. Boxing, it's pretty simple. It's hard out there, but it's simple. There's only a few punches you can do and a few things that can happen. So, yeah, I'm pretty. I really enjoy that challenge of when they come back to trying to, if the fight's hard, to trying to make them change a fight, and I believe that. With good advice, if you've got a good fighter that listens, it happens. It's happened many times for me.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, definitely. We've got some big fights coming up, which is exciting. So round off the year. Absolutely. Well, thanks, Corey. Really appreciate you spending some time with us this morning.
Thanks for having me on your walk. I really enjoyed it. I don't walk too often. I don't do Zoom, but it was something that I really, really enjoyed, and I hope you have great success with it. And I think that there is an opportunity for you to get some major sponsors on board and support you and support some charities and make it well. We talk about talking to people, like how do you do and stuff, mate. Walking is as important, and especially if people are listening to people who have had influence on their life. I think it's a real big, great thing you're doing, Corey.
Well, we've got, I think now we've still got about 2 weeks to go, and in this sort of challenge period that, we were trying to get a guest every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I think now we're up to we've raised about like $10,000 already. So it was interesting at the start. I had this whole thing. I said, right, I wanted to get to 500 meals, which meant I was going to have to raise about 30 grand. But then I had those sort of words of Wayne Swass ringing in my ear when I first started doing anything to do with the walk. And I know it's very cliched. He goes, oh, look, if you can help even one person with this, until you actually get a message knowing what the impact you've made, you don't understand the power of that statement. But then I just stripped it back and said, you know what, whatever we get's a bonus, because it means that either one person is actually going to be having like a Christmas lunch at their own house.
Yeah.
And thus far, like even with that 10 grand, well, that means 150, 160 people are going to have Christmas.
You know how crazy is it? You said, we spoke about some other things the other day. We're finishing up now, but I want to show you a little thing that I done just on the weekend, and they sent me a message that made me feel so great. It's bizarre that you just brought that up, but I'll show it to you anyway. But
thanks, Corey.
It's been amazing,
really
mate.
Appreciate it.
It's been really, really enjoyable. Thank you.
And I've loved being down in the best sports memorabilia place I've been in a long time. I might be sneaking out with a few prints, so just turn your back, Jeff, and if a few things disappear in a belt or two, I'll lob up to a lunch today with one of these belts. It'll go really well.
I'll never forget really quick, and Brian Lara came here one day and I gave him one, and apparently went out that night, he had this belt on.
I can imagine.
Yeah. That's the ultimate bling, just rocking around with a world heavyweight belt.
Yeah.
Doesn't get any better than that.
Absolutely. All right, Brent.
Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, mate.
Don't forget to subscribe, Standing 8, YouTube, Apple Podcast and Spotify.